say we'll wait till later, but about that spreadsheet and making some calls. I felt kind of bad taking some of those names off, but because we haven't seen them in years, I just figured that was probably the best bet. Is that the right move?
And some of them are still on the email list, and some of them have intentionally taken themselves off the email list. I think that's sort of their way of communicating that they're either at another church or whatever. So
right.
My rule of thumb is if we hadn't heard from him in a couple of years.
Okay.
Now, the one exception to that, of course, he was just in church like 2 months ago. Not 2 months ago, back in the spring. And that's Lee.
Yeah.
He actually joined another church, another denomination. But he considers us his home church, the church he grew up in.
Right.
I think he would have some good perspectives to give since he's been a long-time member up to the last couple of years. So, hey, Brett.
Plus, he was on.
Hello.
He was on. I think the whole committee for.
He was on my call committee.
The call committee. That's right.
Yeah.
So.
And that's, believe it or not, 2.5 years ago.
Right.
Wow.
2.5 years closer to retirement.
I mean, 2.5 days ago, right?
That's right. Feels that way. It absolutely does. Brett, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. How did the Twins do this past weekend? Were they running?
Yeah, they did well, and now they're running for the high school team. So I was a little worried about making the meeting because I had to go. They were going to practice at Saunders Ferry, and with the president being here, the traffic was a little messed up. But
yeah,
they ended up canceling that, so I just had to go get them at the school.
So they're running with the high school kids? Are they like on a different team?
So they finished their middle school season, and now since that's over, they're eligible to run for high school. So there's only 2 meets though, so
keep them running.
Maybe 3. Yeah, yep, they're loving it. So
good for them. Well, Bill, do you want to go ahead and start, and we'll work with what we got? I'm recording this.
Okay, let me ask, which of you will likely be the facilitator for the conversation?
With the congregation?
When you have, yes, Will you do that, Joel, or will one of the committee members?
We can talk about it, or even maybe do it as a tag team kind of thing.
You can decide that as you go. So what I'll do, just on the front end, I will email this slide deck to you, Joel. Some of it you may want to craft based on your own culture and context. You may language, whatever, you'll get a feel for it as we go through, but it's pretty straightforward. So you feel free to do that, adapt it to your setting. And then who will be the note keeper or the mural person handling the timeline and the data in the group?
I think Andy had sort of signed up in our last meeting.
I believe that's right. So he's not here to do that for us tonight to show you. Is he ready to do that, or is he still kind of on the learning curve?
No, I think so. I haven't talked to him specifically about it, but he's very good with software. And
well, one of the things you'll want him to be ready, obviously, for that.
Right.
Have you kind of got a calendar laid out, or have you started the date?
The thing we have to decide tonight is, I think we can do it in one meeting because of the size.
Right. We may want to give another opportunity. Just depends on your response, I guess.
Right. And so I was thinking that we do this, pull my calendar back up here, like the 15th, which is, 4 weeks from now.
November. So I give you time to enlist the support, get it promoted, that kind of thing.
Right.
What I'll do tonight is, and then if we need to, once you get everything kind of in place, you've contacted, you know what it is, if we want to have another meeting before the 15th, just to, if you have any questions, that kind of thing, then we can plan it. But this will give you an introduction to the frame of it, what it looks like, and then Andy, you may want to rehearse that with him with the mural, because the timeline that it's a visual timeline. You literally you'll be a round table discussion with everybody in the room. you'll see as we do it, I'll do it with you, and he'll be recording your responses on sticky notes, and they'll be going up on the timeline.
Okay.
So he'll be the recorder,
Right.
as it were. So, and then one of you or a team of you will be doing the facilitating. The important thing about the facilitation is that you want to ensure that everybody gets a voice and chance. So you know how it is in a room. Some people love the microphone and other people shy away from it. And so it's the facilitator's responsibility to make it a conversation.
Right.
And to hear from everyone, get everybody's input. And the questions are very straightforward. And on the front end of it, well, we'll go through it. You'll see, we'll provide for them an overview of what you received at the orientation and coming in, the appreciative model, so that they'll have a sense of what's going to underlay all three of these conversations. So let me just, can I share? Will you enable the sharing for me, and I'll put this up there.
I thought I had where you could, but let me
Put it right there next to the.
There you go.
Okay.
Now you should be able to do it now.
Hold on just a second.
Sure. Y'all, I'm going to move my window over to my big screen over here, which means I'll be looking sort of sideways at you, but that doesn't mean I love you any less. It's just easier for me. My
I'm doing the same.
camera's over here, but the big screen is over here. And
Yep.
So
For
Yeah,
some
y'all are
reason,
here.
Just texting Lauren to see if she's join us.
okay. Bill, is it letting you share, buddy?
it
There
said
she is.
There's
it
Lauren.
said failed to start. Can you see that slide now?
I do.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so Joel, again, before we start, this is what I'll send to you, and then you guys can play with it and adapt it as you like, and also become comfortable with it. So you'll begin right here, welcoming the people to the first congregational conversation. And so as they come into the room, et cetera, get, just as you would in any group meeting, welcoming folks. We really begin with, we all come into this space this evening with questions about church in the 21st century, questions about the church in the South, questions about church and its role in our own individual lives. We have questions about our church in terms of our future and where we're headed. We have a sense of what it's been in the past, but what will it be as we move forward? And there are there's many opinions about that, as there are people in the room. Over the next few months together, our church is going to be participating in a plan that's going to unfold around three primary conversations. Hopefully by the end of this, by the time we get to the third of the conversations, perhaps we might even be in the same physical space together, but who knows about that. But we're going to have congregational conversations over the next several weeks, actually the next several months. And in this conversation, we're going to take a look at our past. Who are we? Who are we when we're at our best? Where did we come from? What does our history tell us about what has shaped us? What do we bring with us from the past, the memories, the narratives, that might serve us well as we face the future ahead? In our second conversation, we're going to take a real good look in the mirror, so to speak. We're going to look at our church at Memorial Lutheran as it is today. We're going to be thinking about our vision. That's the question underlying all of these questions. Where are we headed? But we want to begin by taking an honest look at ourselves, at the things that we're thankful for as we look ahead, the things that we're doing well, the things perhaps that we're not doing as well as we once did. There may be things, especially coming out of this pandemic, that we have learned maybe weren't as important as we thought they were. Perhaps there are things that we will lay down, set aside, other things that we'll pick up because of new learning. In our second conversation, we're going to take a good look at ourselves. And in another sense, we're also going to be we're going to look out the window. We're going to be looking at the community that we find ourselves in, that we've been called to serve. What partnerships are out there? What can we learn about the needs around us? We may assume that we know where we live, but perhaps things have changed. What have those changes been? And the third conversation, we'll look into the future. And we're going to really do some dreaming together in this very space, or perhaps face to face. We'll be asking one another to imagine, to dream a God-sized dream. What do we sense God asking, calling us to become? Where do we sense God leading us as a church? So over the next few months together, we're going to be looking at our past, our present, and at our future. Now, as we do this, we're going to be uncovering our core values. I like to call them core positives. And so I want you to know this, that one, this process is a spiritual discernment process. I want you to know that we will be the experts in the room. We want to hear from everyone. In that sense, this process is radically congregational. And these conversations are integral to the planning process. So we want you to make every effort to be in the room. Will it be messy? Well, yeah, I guess you could call it messy because when there are lots of people or lots of cooks in the kitchen, it can be messy. But the process itself, in some ways, is more important than the product that will be produced. We're going to learn and gain a lot from one another. I want to say this, not everyone, not anyone's going to get everything that they want. We're going to be asking what God wants for our church. The question is not what do you want, but who does God intend us to be? Now, the path that we'll follow is going to follow kind of along this kind of track. What's right about Memorial Lutheran? That's what we'll be asking. What is our positive core? What do we look like when we're at our best? What are those memories and hopes and narratives that have shaped us? And how do we build on that? How can we take those core strengths, those values, those positives, and push them into our future? We're going to ask you to join us, join hands and hearts together, imagining what 2025 might look like if we did that really well. And then as a body and community of faith, we're going to design a path that's moving us from today toward that new reality. Now, when I said spiritual discernment, I was really borrowing from Ignatius's idea of holy indifference, where back in the 16th century, he said it like this: we ought to come to a point in our lives as Christ followers where we are indifferent to anything but God's will. In other words, God's will ought to occupy the supreme position in our decision making, in the lives that we are living. Now, I know that everybody in this room, you're very capable and you're very smart, and you've probably done some strategic planning on your own. But this is not about human decision making. It's not human decision making. We want to make a concerted effort. We want, as a community of faith, to pray that God would grant us the wisdom necessary to seek His will for our lives. Now, at this point, guys, you may want to use divine will. You may want to use God-sized dreams, God's dream for our church, God's future for our church, God's will for our church, whatever you think might best communicate. But the point being, we're not just making human decisions, we're seeking God's will. You might think of it like the bookends in the Gospel of Luke. You remember in Luke's Gospel, at the Annunciation, Mary's prayer, well, she's told that she's going to have a child, and she knows better. She knows differently, but she comes to the point where she prays the prayer of indifference. Let it be to me according to your word. And then, of course, Jesus's prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane in Luke chapter 22, where Jesus himself wrestles with this whole issue of what we face, a future, an unknown future. And he prays, not my will, but yours be done. That's spiritual discernment, and where we hope as a community of faith we can move toward, strive for. Yeah, it's a process, and we're going to have to pray that prayer together for God's will. Again, that could be God's dream, God's path for us, however you want to say that. But I would encourage all of us as a congregation to be praying for God's will, nothing more, nothing else, nothing less. You might think of it like this: every individual, every one of us, we need to be asking the question, is there anything that I need to set aside so that I can be open to what God wants? Is there something that needs to die in me in order for God's will to come forth in my life? What we're really asking is that the church during this time, what is it that we need to set aside? Now you just think about that time out. Think about that, the power of that as a congregation. Joel, as a pastor leader, what if we came to the point as a community of faith where we said, God, whatever it is we need to do, could we set aside some of those sacred cows? Could we set aside some of those things that, that we've been unwilling to do so? Could we be willing to do that? What needs to happen in us in order for your will to come forth in our life as a congregation? So that sounds like a pretty awesome task and might be intimidating to any of us. So why not pray the prayer that James taught us to pray? If we're lacking wisdom, let's ask God. Let's just, be vulnerable enough and humble enough to say, God, you promised that you'd give to us generously and ungrudgingly. We're praying. Give us wisdom to know how to go forward. So that's the kind of 30,000 foot flyover that you'll want to do in the first 10 minutes or so to give folks some context. Then you move to...
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, that's Siri. Then we'll move to this is the purpose of our conversation this evening. We're going to take a look at our history and celebrate where we have been, who we've been, and what we've done. And at that time, you'll put up the timeline, and you'll ask, is it Andy? Andy will introduce the folks to the timeline. I'd encourage you on the timeline to put current events, to put historical events in the life of the church. It'll be done, Andy, via Shanti. She's already prepared the base or the template for your church. And so once Andy's contacted with her, he may have already done that. He will be kind of brought up to speed, and she'll meet him where at whatever point of need he has. So
we need to go ahead and pre-fill out that timeline. Right?
Yeah, yes, she's got the template, but you'd want to put some things on there like that are significant in your church's history, so that when people look at it, they'll say, "Oh yeah, it gives some context and some life to it." So I'd bring in a history person. A lot of churches might put current events, things that happened in the Nashville area, big events. I know I did this with West End last week, and they had put like in the flood and the previous storm that had come, just different things that have come through the city. Some churches I've done have put presidential candidates along the way, just to mark, to give it some life. Whatever you do will help it. And Andy will have a sense of that because he'll see it. It can only hold so much in this on this platform. It's not like if we were in real space, we would have a big long timeline on the wall. But this will have to do for now. So once Andy's got that, then we'll be ready, and he'll be handling again the note keeping. And so now, as we take a look at this timeline on a sticky note, I'm going to ask each one of you, if you will, to write, or I'll have to change that to give us your name and give us the date that you connected to Memorial Lutheran. And so what you do then, whoever's the facilitator will go around the room, and we will ask one another. Let's just do that right now. Let me see. I can't see you guys.
If you go,
Now, did you lose the share the video?
we did. We have your screen where we can see all your email.
Okay, let me see if where I put that. Now you see, who do y'all see there now?
We see us again on your screen.
Okay, let me whoops. I know what I'm gonna do. Hold on.
Are you actually wanting us to pull up that timeline right now? Is that what, or are we just kind of imagining what it would be like if we were?
Yeah, we don't have it, Andy. I don't have it.
I think she sent it to us all. I have the timeline pulled up.
I just don't think there's a lot on there yet, though. I think,
It's blank. It just says MLC timeline.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Bill, what you were wanting us to do is one second name and how.
And then you can practice again with yourselves and go through it. And what Andy will be doing is he'll be recording the data as you move along, and then it just fills it. The timeline forms itself as you move through the conversation. So let's go around the room. Julie, why don't you begin? Tell me when you connected to Memorial Lutheran.
I think it was probably around March of 2007, maybe April 2007. Or is that right? 2007. That's right. Forgot what year we were in.
2007?
The year my dad died, so 2007 is when he died, and the pastor at the time was our neighbor, and he drove me to the airport because my husband was not able to, and I had to fly home.
Okay.
And that's how, shortly after that they were looking for someone to fill the role of cantor, song leader. So I guess I was introduced to the church, but I didn't actually physically get to the church till later that year, 2007.
Okay. Jenny, what about you?
Well, I had decided I'd been out of church for a while, and I had decided I wanted to start going to church again, and started looking up Lutheran churches, and I had visited one, but it wasn't a good fit for me. And I thought, well, this one is fairly close to home, so let me visit. And I think the date was May 26th of 2019.
Oh, so
And it was a good fit, and I've stayed.
cool. So you're a newbie.
I am.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, Andy and I actually officially joined on the same day.
Oh, is that right? Cool.
Yeah, which was later that year, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lauren, how about you? Is she frozen?
I think she is. She's actually, I think, in the car waiting to.
Okay. How about you, Brett?
I think it was 2011 we sort of started going. We were going to an Episcopal church, and Eve's mom was Lutheran, so that we started going when she would visit us. So we were very sporadic, around 2011. But yeah, then it was much closer, and with small kids, it was easier. We got to know all the people, and that's sort of how we ended up staying there.
Yeah. How about Joel? When did you come to Memorial Lutheran? You're muted.
You're muted, but your hands are telling a great story.
Yeah.
I'm pushing the space. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess that I didn't have the Zoom window selected, and so it wasn't honoring my spacebar efforts. It was the spring of 2017, I think. Maybe somebody can jump in on there, when I was called as pastor, because I think I've had 17, 18. No, I've only had 2 Christmases here, right?
Yes.
Spring of 2018. It was right in the middle of Lent.
Yeah. So you see what we're doing. So Andy will be populating that timeline with folks, and they'll be filling in up there, and so you'll have this visual at the end. After you've gone around, you got everybody there, you'll take a look at it, and maybe you'll make an observation of what you see there. There may be a constellation of growth during a certain decade. There may have been some, or just take just a moment to take a look at your history and your place in it. At the beginning, before we started this, when you first looked at it, you may have made some statement or two just about your church's history, and look at where you are in the life and times of the church. So now I want to ask you this question. What was going on at Memorial Lutheran that drew you here? I want to know, I'd like to hear from each one of you this evening. What was the church doing that attracted you? Who would like to start?
I don't mind. I can start.
Okay.
So as I said, we were going to an Episcopal church, and it was a larger church, but we were going to the 8 a.m. service. So it was a smaller group, and we liked that feel. But that church was getting rid of that. And when we visited Memorial, it was the fact that the congregation actually talked to us. They spoke to us, and it wasn't this, sort of recruitment effort. It was genuine conversation, and the music was beautiful. The church itself was beautiful, and it just felt like a good fit. But it was meeting the congregation and knowing those people that sort of, we thought, well, we could go to this later service at the Episcopal church where we don't know anybody and everybody comes in and leaves, and that's that. Or we could go to a church where there's relationships and people that you connect with. So
cool.
that was the selling factor for us.
Cool. Thank you, Brett. Thanks for sharing that with us. Lauren, you are unfrozen now, so we're glad to see you.
I've been hearing everything. I feel.
Oh, we don't have a very good signal from you.
Yeah, I don't see everybody right now, but I heard that. It made me almost cry what Brett said. I joined in. I was the organist and pianist hired in August 2009, right before my daughter was born. And I was hired, but I loved I loved how small and quaint it was. I loved at that point there was a little upright piano, and it was just, everything was very sweet.
Yeah. So it was a place where you could exercise your gifts. And so that was 2009.
Yes. Well, I don't know, probably a few weeks or a month before Pastor Dean, who was the pastor then, called me, I wrote one of my infamous Post-it notes, which is sort of how I live my life. And I just wrote, simple church job nearby would be nice.
Yeah.
And then he called and he said, I've got a simple church job nearby. At that point, there was no choir. it was pretty straightforward, and I was, 7 months pregnant.
Yeah. Well, great.
And yeah.
Great. Hey, Julie, how about you?
I too was hired. My husband and I had visited the church just because the pastor at the time was our neighbor, and so he was really great and a nice family, and we just went to do some holiday music, and then that was when I was asked if I would work as cantor and song leader. But from that very moment, everybody in the church, as Brett expressed earlier, were just genuinely kind people, and just made me feel so welcome. Like, it was just so encouraging for me as just to sing in front of this group of people, and each one of them were just so precious. They just and then I became pregnant. I had my baby March of 2009, so a little before Lauren had Samantha, and they had a baby shower for me, and were just so generous and welcoming. So, I mean, I went there to sing, but knew nothing about the Lutheran church, and then was just embraced by this beautiful congregation who I think just really lived that spirit of just extravagant generosity.
So you kind of get what will be happening here. Andy will be recording the key traits, the anecdotes. We want to be specifically giving attention to the language, the vocabulary, the phrasing, because in the second conversation, you'll be giving a report back to the church of the things that the church has said. And you would like for them to recognize their own voices, their stories, in the ways that you can. Not, you're not going to quote everybody, but you get my point. We want to really connect. Remember, in this appreciative inquiry, we want to be focusing on our strengths, who we are when we're at our best. Jenny, tell us about what was going on at church that drew you here, and what attracted you.
Well, because of technology, I had looked them up ahead of time, and I found out through looking at the website that they really liked to fellowship, and that they had, of course, the worship services. And something else that appealed to me is they really like to eat, but don't we all? And I think the first Sunday that I was there, they actually had a potluck when we were having in-person services. Most every month on the fourth Sunday of the month, we have a potluck after the service. So, of course, I hadn't brought anything, but they said, "Oh, come on, you're welcome to come." So of course I did, and the food was yummy. And as Brett and others have said, I really enjoyed the music. We did have an organist then, and I love the organ. I play keyboards, and for a while in high school took organ myself. So, and music has always been appealing to me. If I were to go to a church and they basically had no music, I'd probably be moving on, because to me, it's a very crucial part of the worship service and something I really enjoy. So it was a combination of all those things. Everybody was very welcoming. They didn't, for lack of a better way to put it, make me feel like I was not quite the same because I was blind. And I say that because some congregations do that. It's like, oh my gosh, she's blind. How do I act? And they didn't do that at all. Everyone was very welcoming. And in no time, we were all working together to try to figure out ways that we could make the service more accessible to me. So like I say, it was a great fit.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Joel, I know you were called as pastor, and that drew you here, but what have you noticed about Memorial that has been attractive from the very start?
I think I was in a little bit of a transition. I was the director of pastoral care at a senior retirement community here in Nashville, McKendree Village. and had been there for about 7 years. And prior to that, I was a chaplain at Vanderbilt. And so I'd been in that pastoral care focus for about a decade.
Yeah.
I was really wanting to get back in the local church from a ministry leadership standpoint. And in the interview process, one of the things that was apparent to me, and I've always enjoyed and focused on smaller churches in my ministry, even when I was in Baptist life, they were larger than Memorial, but still within the Baptist context would be considered small churches. And but I really felt in the interview process, and I had actually supplied at Memorial, I don't know, 3-4 times in the last 5 years. I was sort of Dean's go-to guy to supply. Dean was the prior pastor, Bill. And so it was the sense of hopefulness, almost said hopelessness,
Yeah.
hopefulness, that there was within, there was concern that came out a lot in the interview process. What's the outcome going to be for this church down the road? Can we survive? We want to survive. We want more than that. We want to thrive in ministry here. But there was some legitimate fear, and there still is, about whether or not that's a doable thing. But within that, still, when you would hear people talk, there was a sense of hopefulness that God's work is not done in East Nashville through Memorial, that there's still more to do. So that's really what I think. I love the music. I was a church musician long before I was a pastor, and Julie and Lauren and that whole team did a wonderful job. And but I just think that sense of hopefulness really sort of sealed it for me when they extended the call.
Yeah. Well, as we move to the next question, then, of course, you'll have more in the room than this. So you're going to spend 10, 15 minutes. The facilitator, you're just going to have to judge that yourselves. So I'd walk through it together. You'll make a determination on how many are in the room. But I want to remind you that the engagement is what we're seeking, and the opportunity to have meaningful conversations like this will pay dividends as we move through these conversations and toward our vision work. So let that bake, so to speak. So your facilitation, and note that'll be critical as you move forward. So the next question then is, once everybody has responded, of course, Andy will be taking those notes. They'll be going up on the timeline as well. Well, the next question is why, since you've been here, Julie, you said you came in what year did you come?
Sorry, 2007.
In 2007. I thought you were the longest termer, right? In this group, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
So, the question is, it implies, here you are in 2020. There have been numerous people who have come and gone since you arrived.
Mm-hmm.
Why have you stayed? Why do you stay connected to your church? What is that? And what we're going to ask them to do is, we're going to ask them to do that in 1 to 3 words. 1 to 3 words. Just a few statements about why you've stayed. Why are you here? This will go quicker, and Andy will be recording these.
Well, it's familiarity, proximity, and I would say just dedication. I love my church.
Yeah. When you say, tell me more about familiarity. When you say that, what do you mean by that? Is that the larger Lutheran world context? Is that what you were looking for? Or when you say familiar, what are you implying?
It's really kind of familiar from my childhood, although coming to Memorial was the very first experience I had in a Lutheran church.
Yeah.
When I first moved here from Canada, I had gone to a few different churches, and I did not feel at home. But I felt at home there with the liturgy and just the the mindset of how we should be living as Christians.
So say those for us again. Familiarity, proximity.
Proximity.
We get that. Do you walk to church?
No, it's pretty close for me. I guess I could if I really felt ambitious, but no.
Yeah.
And I feel
Dedication.
dedicated to it. I still feel dedicated to my church back in Canada. It's just they're my church. What's mine? It's like my husband. It's like my children. It's my church. You know,
So it
it's
sounds like it's become family for you.
right. It's like claiming ownership of a place that you don't want to let go of. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like till that commitment, till death do you part kind of thing. You want to stay committed to
Awesome.
it.
Thank you, Julie. Jenny, how about you? Why do you stay connected? Jenny, you're on mute if you can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'll just hold down the space key. I think in a way for the same reasons that I decided to make Memorial Lutheran my home, and since I joined, I've actually been given jobs in the church. I'm now on the council, and sometimes I've done some of the reading, and I think once I did some music, so I have an opportunity to participate, and it really is family now. I've also been able to connect with some volunteer opportunities in the community through other people in our church who are doing that, and so it makes me feel like I'm doing something good for others and for myself, and of course for God, and so I enjoy it and I want to keep it up.
If I were to ask you to say all of that you said in just one or two words, what would you say? What would be those words?
I kind of forgot that part, didn't I?
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I'm just, yeah.
Ability to work and be part of a family.
Awesome. I like it. I was doing this conversation in a church in Northwest Georgia, and we had probably 300 people in this big fellowship hall. And we came to that question, and after we gone around the tables, a lot of times in person, I'll ask the facilitator to stand in a room that size. And is there anything that you feel like everybody in this room needs to hear that was said at your table? This young lady got up, and she wasn't the facilitator, but her facilitator kind of nodded at me and said, "It's okay." And she stood up, and she said very much what you just said, Jenny. She said, "I'll tell you why I stayed. It's the first church I'd ever been in where somebody asked me to use my gifts, where somebody asked me if I would be willing to help. Would I do something?" And I've been here ever since. And that was so powerful to me. Sometimes in leadership, we hesitate to ask people to be engaged, and some people are just waiting to be asked. So thanks for sharing that, Jenny. Lauren, how about you? Why do you stay connected? We can't hear you, Lauren. You're muted.
Well, I remember that Pastor Group. I did unmute. Is it working now? I know you guys are frozen, so can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
So Pastor Joel, when he had his interview, I don't really know exactly what this means, but it was powerful. I guess we asked him what was he going to do, or how is he going to grow the church, or how is it going to be vibrant or something, and he said, as long as we
Well, I'm sorry we're missing out on that. We'll get to hear that at the real time that you're in
Yeah,
the room.
that's a cliffhanger.
That is,
Yeah.
I was so anxious to hear.
Yeah, Lauren is either has slow bandwidth
Teach
or
the
she's
gospel or do gospel or it's gospel, something like that. It just made me think.
do the gospel. I see.
It just all made sense. Like this
Yeah,
simple story.
yeah. Awesome.
Be,
Brett,
I
how about you, Brett?
think was what the phrase,
Um,
as long as we will be and do gospel in the community, will be relevant.
Yeah.
well, for me, it's community, spiritual nourishment, and loyalty. I know we're struggling, so I feel like I gotta be in there, do my part, and
Yeah.
keep us going. So that's the loyalty. The community is obviously what I talked about. What attracted me to the church in the first place. I like those people. I want to be around them. So I look forward to going to church to catch up with them, and I can't wait until we can have in-person service. That's, to me, that's a big part of it. I like eating the potluck food with everyone. I like catching up, seeing what they're doing. And the spiritual nourishment is, in today's world, it's hard to just take time and develop your relationship with God, and that's what church is for. That's, if it's through music or catching a good sermon or whatever, I enjoy making time for that. And, so that's church.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that too. Hey, Joel, as pastor, what is it about the congregation that that still inspires you? This is the statement for 2020. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I swear, guys, I'm pushing the space bar.
Yeah.
For me, one of the things that, and the people have been saying this in different ways and different words, and I would point out that Lauren added tradition to hers, which I think is an important part to a lot of our people, this sense of worship tradition. But for me, it's people talking about and living out relationship. The hopefulness, it took me a while to sort of get my mind around this, really flows from the fact that we're a small core. There's no doubt about that. But it's a very committed core. And they're very committed not only to doing and being gospel, but to each other.
Yeah.
Take care of each other, be concerned about each other. And so to me, if I had to, bring it down to 1 to 3 words, the primary one would be relationship. And then the other one is service, relationship. And the service flows out of the relationship, right? Our relationship with the community determines what service we feel we can do and be. Not just internally, but externally.
Right. Thank you, Joel. So then we'll move to this. And this is the question. This is the question here that we really want to sharpen our listening skills. Be really active listeners here. Facilitator. Be really looking for folks and listening to the stories that are behind them. Andy, you'll want to do this. The question is, okay, I would like to know the story, if there is one, the event, the story, the time in your life. When did this church become the church for you? In other words, what was the essence of what was going on in your life? It could be anything. It could be anything like, well, my brother died, and somebody at the church, the Bible study class, the whatever, brought me casseroles for 2 weeks. Or it'll be tied to something significant when that person that meant a great deal and has left an impression. It's the essence of their experience, the anchor. When did this church become, one way to say it, Joel, is when did the church become the body of Christ for you? When did this become a sacred relationship? So use that in whatever way that will communicate to those in your circle. What we're looking for is the essence of that experience. So you'll tell Andy to be listening for that. It may be that more than one of you, if you're in this, y'all are all doing this together. It may be a good practice for all of you just to kind of take on your own notepad some notes so that you can, because you'll be looking at this data and gleaning from it. You're looking for the traits or the values that the church has shown that has connected with people and kept the people and has become the really spiritual connection for them. So think about that for a second. Then after we've gone around the circle and everyone has done it, what we'll ask the group to do is to, okay, let's put on another Post-it note. Let's begin to list what we have heard from one another. What are the central traits? And this really is the work that we're doing. They're collecting all of the experiences, the narratives, the memories, the hopes, those things that are tied to who we were when we were at our best. Those are becoming our central traits, our core positives, so to speak. You may take all of those. There may be a dozen or more different things like relationships, like community, all of those words. You might do, I don't know what you call those kind of wordograms that you can populate it and they put them on there, and the word that comes up most often, if you're keeping a kind of running list of the times that words are said. What I often do is I'll make on my pad, if it's relationships, and every time it's mentioned, I put a check mark beside it. However, you guys decide, but you want to be listening well. When did this church become the church for you? Brett, can you point to an event or an experience or a time when it became really, it wasn't the church that you went to, it became the body of Christ for you?
Well, the birth of my kids sort of, I've always been very spiritual, and not into the church per se. I always saw some of the infighting and it always turned me off. But when I had kids, I wanted to kind of, it was an easy way for me to share sort of my beliefs and say, this community. So I'd say that's what's really connected me, watching my kids grow up in the church. They get asked to read, and I see them developing spiritually, and that's the body of Christ for me. Is that it's continuing. They're seeing some of the same values I have and adopting them outside of hearing them from me. That I'm going to be the dad, I'm going to punish, I'm going to do all that, but yeah, seeing them grow in church.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks. Lauren, how about you?
Am I working okay?
Yep. Well, you were. Julie, we'll go to you.
I would say it was when my daughter Eva got baptized. It was just a significant moment for me. And it was like, it anchored me to that church. She was baptized here, and this is our church.
Yeah. Jenny? You're on mute, Jenny.
Sorry, I forgot. The acceptance and people taking an interest in, I know that Eve, Brett's wife, came up to me one day and she was all curious about, how I get things in Braille and the whole technology thing and just that engaging interest and welcoming and
Personal interest. Yeah. Awesome. Joel, what about you? I know just because you come and you're installed, you're the pastor, it doesn't just happen like that. Is there a specific event or a memory you have when said, hey, I'm where I need to be?
Two of them, really. One, because my wife is always pushing me that even though I'm a pastor, I should not forget the musical background that brought me into ministry and still holds me here. And you know, this is a church where I can still. They've been very patient and welcoming. I wrote a special call to worship for that Advent season. It was it a year ago, Julie, or 2 years ago? And I think it was 2 years ago.
I think it must have been the first year you were here.
Yeah, and that's right. And so it reminded me that I have a special opportunity here in that I don't have to forget that that I bring some musical skills to the table. I can still continue to use some of those, some composition and that kind of deal. But the really powerful one, and I think the essence of that was one of the things we've been hearing people say all night long, which is service, 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 service. An opportunity to use my gifts, like you were talking about in that great example, Bill. The other one was we have a family in our church, Mary Laird and her grandson, and they can't attend because he has pretty advanced disabilities, and I take them communion, or I was until the pandemic hit, and we try to be supportive of them as much as we can. And so Lauren had gotten the children's choir prepared to go do some in-house singing for some of our shut-ins, and we went to Dayton and Mary's house. Dayton is the grandson, and it, you know, life's been fairly tough on Mary, and she's had a pretty tough journey, and she has this vibrant, wondrous grandson who's her daughter, his mother died. In fact, Julie sang, I think, at that service, and so she's having to raise him now. And so we go, and Lauren had done such an amazing job in preparing them. And so the kids get there. There's, I don't know, 8 or 9 of us in the room, and they start singing the carols that they had prepared because it was Christmas time. And then of course, all of a sudden Dayton joins in. Right, he's very exuberant. And he's sitting there in his wheelchair, and then we're singing, I forget whether it was "Oh Holy Night" or "Silent Night," but there was one big word at the end of a phrase, and he just yelled it out and put his hand up in the air. And Lauren, do you remember what word it was or which one of the carols he did it on? I think it was "Silent Night." And
Maybe peace, sleep in heavenly peace.
Sleep in heavenly peace. He did. You know, and he was sort of trying to sing along the whole time, and we all left there just with this incredible sense of joy and beauty, that we had seen something beautiful that God had given us in that moment, and a reminder that this is really what it's about. This is why we're doing what we do.
Yeah,
as a church together. It just sort of encapsulated all those things: the gifts of our people. Relationship forming, celebration of God's presence, all of that, and it was just a very powerful moment.
Yeah. Awesome.
Can you hear me?
We can, Lauren.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Yes, okay. Oh, yeah, and it was such a collab because Judy had kind of insisted, I mean, not insisted, bringing Dayton up. Can you hear me or not? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. You'll get a chance to do it again in a room. So folks, that is the end. You'll thank the folks for being there, etc. And go now. I want you to imagine. I think you had said a good response will be something like 25 folks. Is that right? Are you shooting for maybe 20, 25 people?
That would be a supernatural response.
15.
Yes, 15 would be great. If we have 15 adults in that Zoom meeting, I think that's going to be a real win. If we can get to 20, Jesus.
It'd be awesome. Yeah, great. Well, so one of the things I think for you to think about, look, there are five of us tonight. I'm just facilitating, and it took us almost an hour. So you want it to be small enough where you give people time enough, because you can see just in this run through like we've done, it's meaningful. I don't even know you, and I enjoyed it because we're Christians. We share common values, and it's engaging to hear one another's witness of what God means to us. Everybody in your congregation wants to be seen, heard, and part of something meaningful, and this gives opportunity for all three. So I would do everything that you can to encourage as much engagement as you can. If you think you'll have 15, ask yourselves the question: do we want to do 2 facilitators and 2 note takers, and meet all in one room, do the first handful of slides, and then break into groups, 2 groups, and so you can do it in an hour's time? Or do you want everybody to hear everybody and say on the front end, we're going to spend about 90 minutes together? You make the call on that, okay? In some ways, in a tight community like you are, I might argue that it'd be worth the time investment so that everybody can hear from everybody. But again, you decide that. I'm going to send this to Joel. Joel, you share it with then you guys ought to plan to meet again and work on that. If you have any questions coming from that, you call me or email me. I'll join you again prior to it if there's anything I can help you with. But it's pretty straightforward.
Are we going to have this slideshow then? Is this part of what we're going to have?
I would. Yes, I would. I would do that. Even in Zoom, if you were to break into 2 groups, you can have screen sharing ability in each group. The facilitator can do that. You can do that, but in your environment, you may say, hey, we can do it without it. That's up to you. You may want the facilitator just to use it as a script and just do it conversationally. You can do it either way, whatever you think works. But I'll send you this so you'll have the template.
Guys, could we meet again to do this actual official planning next Thursday night? Lauren, does this sound bad for you? You're in transit, I see right now.
Hey, Joel, I'm going to run because I've got another congregation I'm going to do this same thing with. They both wanted this night, and so I begged them to wait till after I was done with y'all.
Thanks.
So, hey, Joel, I'll send this to you. If not tonight, I'll send it to you in the morning. But I'll get it to you, and then you call me. If I need to meet with you again, let me make sure I get it on my calendar.
Yes, sir, Bill. I appreciate so much what you're doing, man. It's great.
All right.
Sure.
All right.
Right, Bill.
Unshare screen.
Peace, everyone.
And I need to go too. I have another meeting that started at 7, so I apologize.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Bye, Jeannie.
I'll send out an email with some suggested meeting times, and y'all can respond to that. How does that sound?
Sure.
That sounds good to me.
Thanks, everybody. I think it's going to be great. And again, we're shooting for that for the.
Oh, you got muted somehow again. Oh.
The 15th, which is the 3rd Sunday in November. After, encourage people to have their own food ready, and we'll do sort of a potluck kind of deal where we eat together and do this conversation together. Does that seem reasonable to everybody? You still here?
Yeah.
Yes. So November 15th?
Right. And there's a reason for that, and that's because, and you'll see this in the newsletter, because of the conversations with Zion, we're going to do a trial test of 2 services on Sunday morning, where we're actually going to go to 11 o'clock during Advent, and I'm going to be up at Zion at 8:45. And then we're going to switch an Epiphany, and we're going to go to 8:45, and they're going to go to 11. And this is an experiment to see if we can, if I was the shared pastor between both churches, could we do both services on Sunday morning without me getting beat up in the parking lot? So, you'll see more about that in the newsletter. Okay, coming out probably tomorrow is the plan. The council's been working on the wording. So, okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Good.
Love you guys so much. Thank you so much for what you're doing for our church.
I don't know why I didn't have good reception.
You're doing better now.
Yeah.
Well, I tried a hotspot. I tried to rig a hotspot or something. So I'll keep working on that. I'm just waiting for Sam to get out of violin class. So it's a great time. I didn't realize that I have such bad cell service.
We'll try to do what we can by email, okay? But if we need to meet again, just know maybe we need to have one more planning session before the 15th.
Well, are we going to try to call people before the 15th too? I'm assuming that.
Yes, that's the next project, and I'll try to catch up with Andy. Julie, would you be willing to divide the names up and assign, 3 or 4 family groups to each one of us, and
Sure.
create that list in Word or something, and so we can send it out to everybody?
Yeah, I can just maybe use Excel and clean it up a little bit, and then just highlight colors by person,
Right, and we need their name and the phone number is what we need. Right, and beside each name, put either, Brett or Lauren or you or Jeannie or, what's his name? Andy.
And we're all gonna call somebody
Right.
Okay.
We'll call two to 3 family groups.
Perfect. Okay. Good.
I
All
think
right.
personal invitation is going to be important to getting them to participate. And we'll develop a script,
That's what I was curious about. Yeah, just to have some kind of
just sort of a talking point. This is when we're meeting. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And we would really, really like to at least have one adult from each family group, or all adults from each family group in the meeting. I would like to figure out something for the kids to do, but I'm not sure. We're going to have to think about that.
I was wondering about that because they might have some input, especially some some of these older kids. They're kind of the phase too, like they're moving on.
They're coming.
We're in trouble.
Right.
No.
Yeah, they might have something to say about, well, this is the church I want to get married in, or something like that.
Well, and part
Yeah, that's true.
with the kids too is this is the backward looking process, right? This first meeting is the history of how we got here, why it's important, what's holding us here, that kind of stuff, and that may be harder for them to sort of weigh in on.
That's
And
right.
if it runs an hour and a half, that's just going to be too much. They're just not going to be able to stick with it,
Right.
particularly in Zoom. So that's some of the stuff we have to think through, because I don't want to have one of the adults having to be in a Zoom room with the kids and missing out on this. So, maybe we decide that one of y'all should be the facilitator and I'll spend the time with the kids. But I would really love to hear what's being said as pastor. So everybody be thinking about these things, and I will try to send out an email soon with some options. We're going to have to meet again, that's for sure. Probably earlier rather than later, maybe next week, and Thursday night again at 6 o'clock if we can get Lauren a better connection. Because the times seem to work well, if we'll stick to the time frame. And I'll reach out to Andy and see where he is too. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, guys. What's
All
that?
right. Night, everybody.
What's that line?
I know what I can do.
I love that line from Will and Grace where he says, "I love you. I want to dress up like you."
All right.
See,
I love you. I want to dress like you. Is that what it says?
no, he said it was Jack, and he said, "Love you. Want to be you for Halloween. Like I so much. I want to as you for Halloween."
That's great. That's great. Very timely. All right. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.